Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive.
Always exciting to be back.
So today we're going to be tackling something pretty massive and pretty important.
Yeah.
Biodiversity and conservation.
Huge topic.
Yeah, it really is. And we'll be using excerpts from a physical geography textbook
Oh, great one.
to kind of guide us through this intricate web of life on Earth.
I think what's really cool about this textbook is how it links
Yeah.
biodiversity to the landscapes and the climates.
Right.
And even the weathering processes we talked about.
Yeah, from like way back in Chapter 5.
Exactly.
Figure 5.2 even, right?
Yeah.
So it's basically saying that all the variety of life we see, it's a direct result of, how our planet's surface is shaped.
Oh, absolutely. And the scale of it.
Right.
It's just mind-blowing, millions of species. And I bet you
Oh, yeah.
so many are still yet to be discovered,
Absolutely.
hidden away in every corner of the globe.
Yeah. And I mean, especially when you think about tropical forests.
Oh, they're like the treasure chests of biodiversity.
Yeah.
It just makes you wonder, will we ever uncover all the secrets hidden in those forests?
I mean, who knows what's out there?
It also kind of makes you think about the ethics,
Oh, for sure.
If we were to discover these things and then potentially, exploit them.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms. But
For sure.
before we get too far ahead of ourselves,
Okay.
let's actually break down this concept of biodiversity itself.
Okay.
So the source material mentions 3 levels:
Okay.
genetic species and ecosystem diversity.
So genetic diversity, that's like,
Yeah,
think about it this way. Like your dog, how is your dog
right.
unique even compared to other dogs of the same breed?
Yeah,
That's genetic diversity.
that's so
The
interesting.
variety within a species, and this diversity, it's essential for healthy populations.
Right.
Allows them to adapt to environmental changes,
Right.
resist diseases. So
It's almost like
but-
their insurance policy
Yeah.
against extinction, you know?
makes them more resilient, exactly.
Yeah, okay, cool.
And then you have species diversity, that's simply the number of different species
Okay.
in a given area.
Mm.
So tropical rainforests are a perfect example.
Right, teeming with life.
Exactly.
It's like comparing a rainforest ecosystem to
Yeah.
a bustling city, you know?
Right, with all its different people.
And then you have maybe the quiet village is like the grassland ecosystem.
I like that analogy.
And then,
And finally, ecosystem diversity. So this encompasses the variety of habitats
okay,
and ecological processes
Okay.
within each type of ecosystem.
so a forest ecosystem
Yes.
is vastly different from a grassland ecosystem.
Precisely different plants, animals, soil composition, even weather patterns.
Yeah, okay.
It's just amazing. And this intricate web of life.
Yeah,
It's not just beautiful, it's vital.
right.
And the source material really digs deep into the importance of biodiversity
Right.
from ecological, economic, even scientific perspectives.
And it's amazing how everything is just so interconnected.
It really is.
And we humans are a part of that.
We are a part of that web, whether we realize it or not.
Even if we don't always necessarily realize it.
Think about how we contribute to sustaining the ecosystem
Yeah.
just by existing.
Right.
The air we breathe, the food we eat.
It's all the balance.
It's all part of this delicate balance.
that we need to protect, but the source material doesn't shy away from the fact that, we're losing biodiversity.
Unfortunately, yeah.
That human activities are contributing to that decline.
Yeah, overexploitation of resources, deforestation,
Especially.
especially in those precious tropical regions.
Yeah.
Major concerns, pollution, introduction of invasive species.
Right.
All of these things can have devastating impacts.
Yeah. The textbook even mentions the red panda as a specific example, and it's classified as endangered.
Right, by the IUCNs.
So that's a pretty
Yeah.
stark picture of what they're facing.
And it highlights this bigger issue of habitat fragmentation.
Okay.
So their forest homes are being broken up
Right.
by human development,
Mm.
isolating populations,
Wow.
making them even more vulnerable.
It's heartbreaking
It is.
to think about,
Yeah,
these creatures struggling.
absolutely. And there are so many others.
Yeah. So what are some of the other
Classifications.
classifications that the IUCN uses?
You have vulnerable intravarying,
Mm.
which means a species faces a high risk of extinction in the wild.
Okay.
And then there's rare,
Okay.
which indicates a small population size, making them susceptible to threats.
Right.
And these classifications, they help prioritize conservation efforts.
Okay, so speaking of conservation,
Yeah.
The source material highlights some actions being taken
Yes.
to protect biodiversity, and it specifically mentions India's Wildlife Protection Act of 1972,
Oh, a landmark piece of legislation.
which established national parks and sanctuaries.
It really laid the groundwork for protecting crucial habitats and species.
So that was a turning point.
Yeah, and India is also...
Oh, and India, one of the world's mega diversity centers.
So it holds an incredible amount of global biodiversity.
It's like India is the guardian
It is.
of some of Earth's most precious treasures.
Absolutely.
But within those treasures,
Yeah.
there are these specific areas that are facing
Yes.
significant threats.
The biodiversity hotspots.
And we talked about the red panda and habitat fragmentation.
Right.
What are some other threats that these hotspots face?
Poaching, illegal wildlife trade, and even climate change are impacting these hotspots.
And the textbook uses Madagascar as an example.
Oh, a prime example.
It points out that 85% of its plants and animals are endemic.
Meaning they're found nowhere else
Yeah.
on Earth.
So if we lose...
It's a stark reminder of what's at stake.
Right.
If we lose those unique ecosystems,
Yeah.
we lose an irreplaceable part of our planet's natural heritage.
And while these hotspots are incredibly valuable,
They are
they're also
highly vulnerable.
highly vulnerable.
Yes.
But it's not just a problem
No.
for places like Madagascar. The textbook also mentions Hawaii.
Oh, interesting.
What kind of threats are they facing?
So Hawaii faces threats to its unique species,
Mm-hmm.
from introduced species and development.
Wow.
Even in a wealthy nation, biodiversity is under pressure. Yeah, it's a reminder that conservation needs a global effort,
Right.
and that even seemingly small actions
Yeah.
can have a ripple effect.
Yeah.
Introducing a non-native species can totally disrupt a whole ecosystem.
The source material really emphasizes
It does.
individual action and community involvement. So
Yeah.
it's a call to action for all of us.
Absolutely.
So what are some things that we can do in
Well,
our own lives to make a difference?
there are so many ways we can contribute.
Yeah.
I mean, we can reduce our consumption, choose sustainable products,
Right.
support organizations dedicated to conservation,
Mm-hmm.
and even advocate for policies that prioritize protecting biodiversity.
So it's about being mindful consumers
Exactly.
and active citizens.
Exactly. And the source material highlights the World Conservation Strategy's steps
Okay.
for biodiversity conservation.
So what are
It's a framework for action.
some of the key strategies that they outline?
Okay, so the strategy emphasizes preserving endangered species
Okay.
through measures like captive breeding programs and habitat restoration.
Mm-hmm.
It also focuses on planning and management to prevent extinction.
Okay.
So this could involve things like
Yeah.
creating protected areas and establishing corridors for wildlife movement.
So it's about proactively, chronically the threats
Yes,
before it's too late.
exactly. And of course, protecting diverse habitats is crucial.
Right.
This involves tackling deforestation, pollution, other forms of habitat degradation.
So it sounds like a multifaceted approach
It is.
key here.
Absolutely.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
You're right. And the strategy also calls for regulating the international trade
Okay.
in wildlife to combat poaching and the illegal pet trade.
It's a reminder that this is a global issue, requiring international cooperation.
Yes.
And the source material even mentions the Earth Summit
Mhm.
and the Convention on Biodiversity as examples of this.
These international agreements demonstrate a global commitment to addressing this biodiversity crisis.
Yeah.
Many nations, including India, have signed on, pledging to implement conservation measures.
That's encouraging
It is
to see that level of,
global cooperation.
global cooperation. But going back to the individual level,
Okay,
do you think there's a risk of people feeling overwhelmed
I understand that feeling.
by the scale of the problem?
Yeah.
What can one person really do?
It's important to remember that collective action starts with individual choices.
Okay.
Every action, no matter how small, contributes to a larger movement.
I love that.
It's like casting a vote for a sustainable future.
It's like casting a vote. I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not powerless.
We're not.
Choices matter.
They do. And as consumers,
Yeah.
we have the power to influence businesses and industries to adopt more sustainable practices.
Speaking of the impact of human activities,
Yes.
the textbook dives into how biodiversity loss can have this domino effect.
It can.
So what are some of the consequences?
The consequences can be far-reaching.
Yeah.
The source material points out that biodiversity loss
Mm-hmm.
can lead to a decline in ecosystem services.
Okay.
And these are the benefits that nature provides us.
Right.
Things like clean air and water pollination, climate regulation.
It's like we're jeopardizing
We are.
our own life support system.
Exactly.
We depend on these services for our survival.
Precisely. And as biodiversity declines, ecosystems become less resilient.
Okay.
They're less able to cope with disturbances,
Right.
like droughts, floods, or disease outbreaks.
And this can lead to like a downward spiral,
Can.
further impacting biodiversity and human well-being.
It's a sobering thought.
It is a
But-
sobering thought, but I think it's important
Yeah.
to balance the seriousness of the situation with a sense of hope. Yeah,
And empowerment.
for sure.
So what are some of the most inspiring examples?
Oh, there are so many inspiring stories out there.
Yeah.
One that comes to mind is the recovery of the bald eagle in North America.
Oh, wow.
Once on the brink of extinction.
Yeah.
They've made a remarkable comeback thanks to conservation efforts,
Wow.
including habitat restoration and the banning of the pesticide DDT.
That's incredible.
It is.
It shows that, focused action
It does.
can really make a difference
We can turn things around if we work together.
if we work together.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there are
And countless,
those other examples.
from community-led reforestation projects
Yeah.
to the establishment of marine protected areas that are helping to rebuild fish populations.
It's heartening to know that there are people
It is.
all over the world
All over the world.
working tirelessly
tirelessly.
to protect biodiversity.
And the source material underscores that we're not just protecting plants and animals for their sake.
Right.
We're protecting our own future.
Biodiversity is intertwined with human well-being in countless ways.
We've talked about the ecological and environmental consequences
Yes.
of biodiversity loss, but what about the economic impact?
Economically, biodiversity is incredibly valuable.
Yeah.
It provides us with food, medicine, building materials, and so much more.
It's like nature's
It is.
research and development lab,
Exactly.
constantly providing us with
It is.
new solutions and ideas.
For example, many modern medicines are derived from plants and fungi.
Wow.
And who knows what other potential cures or breakthroughs lie hidden
Right.
in the vast diversity of life on Earth.
It's a very compelling argument for protecting biodiversity.
It is.
Not just for its intrinsic value, but for its potential
Absolutely.
to benefit humanity.
Absolutely.
In countless ways.
And beyond the economic benefits, there's also the scientific importance of biodiversity.
Right. The source material talks about,
Right.
biodiversity helping us understand life itself.
It's like having millions of living laboratories all around us,
Wow.
each one holding secrets to unlock.
Yeah.
Studying diverse life forms helps us understand evolution genetics,
Yeah.
the intricate web of relationships that connect all living things.
It's amazing.
It deepens our understanding of the natural world
Yeah.
and our place within it.
To think about all the mysteries
There are so many.
that are still out there,
Yeah.
waiting to be discovered.
But as we uncover those mysteries,
Yeah.
we need to ensure that our exploration is done responsibly and ethically.
Absolutely. We have a responsibility to protect
Right.
the very thing that makes our planet
Yes.
so unique and vibrant.
Incredible biodiversity.
And that responsibility lies with each and every one of us.
It does.
It's about making conscious choices, advocating for change, and appreciating the interconnectedness of all life.
Well said.
So it's incredible to think about, we share this planet with such a diverse array of life forms.
It really is.
We've explored this concept of biodiversity, the threats it faces,
Oh, yeah.
and some of the inspiring efforts to protect it.
Yeah. So what are some specific examples of these conservation wins?
Well, one prominent example from our source material is India's Wildlife Protection Act of 1972.
Okay.
This landmark legislation led to the establishment of national parks and sanctuaries,
Right.
really playing a crucial role in safeguarding India's incredible biodiversity.
It seems like India really took a proactive approach.
They did.
The textbook mentions that India is one of the world's mega diversity centers.
Yes.
What does that mean exactly?
So mega diversity centers are regions that harbor an exceptionally high concentration
Okay.
of the world species. They're like biodiversity hotspots.
Wow.
On a grand scale, countries like Brazil, Indonesia, and of course India
Yeah.
fall into this category.
So they're kind of like the guardians
They are.
of a significant chunk of Earth's biodiversity.
Absolutely.
And within these mega diversity centers are the biodiversity hotspots that we talked about.
Yes.
Those regions with a particularly high number of endemic species
Right.
facing significant threats. Exactly. We've already discussed Madagascar.
Yeah, with
Right.
its astonishing
85% endemism rate.
85%.
But there's another hotspot highlighted in the textbook,
Okay.
that's a little closer to home for many listeners. The Western Ghats of India.
Oh, that's interesting. I've heard of the Western Ghats,
Yeah.
but I don't know much about them.
Okay.
Why are they considered a biodiversity hotspot?
So the Western Ghats are a mountain range that runs along the western coast of India.
Okay.
And they create this unique ecosystem
Right.
that supports an incredible array of plants and animals, many of which are found nowhere else
Wow.
in the world.
So it's like a...
A haven for unique and irreplaceable life.
But you mentioned that hotspots face significant threats.
Unfortunately, yes.
So what kind of challenges are the Western Ghats up against?
Well, they're facing a multitude of pressures,
Yeah.
including deforestation, habitat fragmentation,
Right.
and human encroachment.
So as human populations grow
Yes,
and development expands,
the pressure on these fragile ecosystems intensifies.
it's a reminder that even in a place as biodiverse as India,
Yes,
conservation remains a constant battle.
it does.
But the textbook also emphasizes that conservation isn't just about setting aside land
Right.
and protecting it from human interference.
Yeah.
It's about finding ways for humans and nature to coexist sustainably.
That's a crucial point. Conservation efforts need to consider the needs of local communities, right, and find ways to integrate biodiversity protection with sustainable development practices.
So it's about finding that balance
That is.
between protecting nature
Yeah.
and meeting human needs.
Absolutely.
So are there any examples of this kind of integrated approach?
Yes. The textbook highlights the concept of biosphere reserves.
Okay.
And these are areas designated by UNESCO that aim to promote solutions, reconciling the conservation of biodiversity with its sustainable use.
That sounds promising.
It is.
How do biosphere reserves work in practice?
So they typically consist of 3 interconnected zones.
Yeah.
A core area dedicated to strict protection. A buffer zone where sustainable activities like ecotourism and research are allowed.
Okay.
And a transition zone
Okay.
where human settlements and activities are integrated with conservation goals.
So it's almost like creating a gradient
Mm,
of protection,
yes.
allowing for this balance.
Exactly. And it's not just about physical spaces.
Right.
It's also about engaging local communities
Right.
in conservation efforts.
When people who live near these areas are involved
Yes.
and benefit from conservation,
They become its strongest advocates.
it makes sense.
It does.
It's about creating this win-win situation
Exactly.
for both people and nature.
Absolutely.
But shifting gears a bit, the textbook also mentions something called the World Conservation Strategy.
Yes, a framework for global conservation efforts.
Okay, so what is that exactly?
So the World Conservation Strategy, developed by the IUCN, provides a framework
Okay.
for global conservation efforts.
Okay.
It outlines key principles and actions for protecting biodiversity.
We touched on some of those actions earlier.
We did.
Could you remind us of a few key points?
So the strategy emphasizes the need to preserve endangered species,
Okay.
manage ecosystems sustainably,
Right.
and restore degraded habitats. It calls for international cooperation
Mm-hmm.
and the integration of conservation into all aspects of human activity,
Wow.
from agriculture to urban planning.
It's a reminder that conservation is not just the responsibility of scientists
It's not.
or governments.
No.
It's a collective effort
It is.
that requires everyone's participation.
And it highlights that protecting biodiversity isn't just about saving plants and animals for their sake.
Right.
It's about safeguarding our own future.
Right.
Biodiversity underpins the health of our planet and our well-being.
So it's not just about saving cute animals.
No.
It's about ensuring a healthy and prosperous future
It is.
for ourselves and generations to come.
Precisely. And the textbook ends on a powerful note,
Okay.
reminding us that every action, no matter how small, contributes to a healthier, more diverse, and more resilient planet.
That's a great message to leave our listeners with.
It is.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive,
Yeah,
exploring the incredible tapestry of life on Earth, the challenges it faces,
absolutely.
and the inspiring efforts to protect it.
Yes.
So as we wrap up, what's one key takeaway
Okay.
you hope our listeners will remember?
I hope they come away with a sense of awe and wonder for the incredible diversity of life on our planet,
Yeah.
and a renewed appreciation for the interconnectedness of all living things.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, I hope they feel empowered to make a difference.
Because ultimately, we're all part of this story.
We are.
And we have the power to shape the ending.
We do.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to continue exploring, learning, and taking action.
Absolutely.
Every step we take towards protecting biodiversity is a step towards a brighter future for all.
Well said.
And on that note, we bid you farewell from the deep dive.
Until next time.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep protecting the incredible web of life on Earth.